Far Cry 5 is the brand new iteration in the Ubisoft factory. I mean, what can I say about this game that most reviewers haven't summed up in 250 words or less? I guess I could say it's mediocrity incarnated, bland, repetitive, and at times fun. I can give a speech about how Ubisoft has managed to keep expectations right where they're at. I mean, they are fucking masters at setting the bar low. Ubisoft's the underachiever of the AAA market. They're not bad. Certainly not good. Anyway, I'm not gonna open that can of worms. I'll just add that to the list of things keeping me awake at night. Like whether or not thousands of spiders are crawling in my mouth, or if there's someone outside my window watching me sleep. Yeah. I assume you didn't come here to learn all about my neurotic behavior. I didn't play any Far Cry games before 3, so, you know, I heard they were okay. They were good in theory, I guess. Then we got Far Cry 4, which I'd rather have my balls ripped from their flesh sack and stapled to my thigh than play. I guess that's an extreme exaggeration. Maybe gouge out one of my eyeballs, swallowing it, shitting it out for later. Yeah, still too extreme. Let's meet each other halfway here. I guess I would rather help someone move than play Far Cry 4. Yeah, that's a good middle ground. And you don't even want to know what I do to myself if I have to play Far Cry Primal. Let's just say it might involve a few animals in unmentionable area. At this point, they should just remove the Far Cry and Assassin's Creed logo and just leave a blank cover that reads, "It's a Ubisoft game." Subtitle, "What did you expect?" Because at this point, you're not buying the logo, you're just buying a Ubisoft game. Like I said earlier, what can I say about Far Cry 5 that hasn't already been said? To be honest, I don't think people take Ubisoft games all that serious. None of their games have any staying power. However, I gotta say, Far Cry 5 has made some small deviations, but they still aren't crossing that line. Far Cry 5 takes place in the fictional Hope County in Montana. Much of the story draws themes from Americana. Essentially, you play a no-name deputy or rook traveling by helicopter with the sheriff and marshal to arrest a father known as Joseph C. After receiving reports that his followers have been abducting and terrorizing citizens, you arrive there to bring some justice. However, blah blah blah, stuff happens and your co-workers are taken by the Seed family, which in a lot of ways has the same setup as Far Cry 3, wherein you have to run away while having no weapons and are then saved by Dennis. Wait, sorry, I meant Dutch. You then have open reign to pursue the Seed family with the caveat of rescuing your co-workers, which, why is that even a thing? I guess I could bullet point the story to you, or the lack of it. Essentially, you travel to point A and then point B, doing repetitive tasks such as shooting things, throwing things, blowing things up. Typical Ubisoft fashion. There's a real dissonance from the story and gameplay, which is something that most games suffer from. However, the case with Far Cry 5, you're basically given a progression bar for each of the family members, and at certain thresholds you unlock cutscenes, regardless of whatever the fuck you were doing in the game. What really annoys me is that you're whisked away. All of a sudden, little flashes of light come on the screen and you awake from your loading screen to find that you have been captured. This is such a sloppy and lazy way to present the story and the characters to the player. It takes away that player agency and really breaks immersion for me. I mean, here's a game about going where you want and doing what you want, only to find out that the choices you make in the game don't matter. Whether you take over this stronghold or blow up one of their shrines, the story all revolves around the Seed family, which in large part, the monologues they have with you after being captured are some of the most engaging interactions you have in the story. When I say the story all revolves around the Seed family, as you progress through the story, you learn more about them and their moral and philosophical stances regarding the American way, such as consumerism and happiness. I can see most people finding these discussions shallow because Ubisoft's need to appeal to everyone. At times you can tell they're trying to get at something, but then they just end up tiptoeing around the subject altogether. Throughout the course of the game, the Seed family presents you with questions in order to challenge your decisions as a player, but then again, this is just another Ubisoft ploy at the illusion of player freedom. This is not to say that the questions provided by the Seed family aren't engaging. Some of the questions presented are almost satirical and meta in some way, poking fun at the player's destruction and carnage throughout the course of the campaign. It's difficult for me to give a summary of the story because it's so segmented. Essentially, you're doing the same set of repeated functions in different regions of the map. Rinse, wash, and repeat. You fill up that progress bar until you unlock another cutscene. The more you progress, the more shit just seems to be happening to you and the characters around you. A lot of people died and stuff, for which all I can say, who the fuck is that guy? No, wait, I think that was the guy that sent me to check out the water pipes or something. No, or was he the guy that wanted me to find the grizzly pelts? Fuck that guy. I had to go all the way to the other side of the map. Well, technically I didn't do it, I just loaded up another quest, but it's the principle that matters. Once the bar is full, you fight a boss battle with one of the family members. It's pretty archaic in a sense, like I'm playing some video game from the early 2000s. You then destroy their bunker and free a bunch of hostages, which I gave two shits about doing. There's no fucks to give for all the talking heads that send you on missions in this game. It feels like I'm talking to Preston or one of the NPCs at the settlement from Fallout 4, asking for help once again. There's no real sense of presentation to any of the other NPCs that follow you throughout the story. After you kill the final Seed member, you're called to come back to where it all started. Spoiler warning, I guess, but I'm pretty sure nobody's playing Far Cry 5 for the story. You meet up with Joseph Seed, who asks you to walk away after killing his entire family. Talk about turning the other cheek, cause if you remember, at the start of the game, he gouges out someone's eyeballs. Fuck, whatever that guy did must have been savage. And for some strange reason, he's mind controlled all of your allies. At that point, I didn't question it, I just wanted it to be done with. After taking back your friends and co-workers and dealing with the Dreamscape bullshit, you then arrest Joseph Seed, who starts spouting some religious mumbo-jumbo, and then it just so happens that nuclear bombs are being dropped in Montana. Apparently, if you read some of the newspapers scattered about in the game, you'll find some bullshit about Korea and America and some sort of Cold War. I don't really know. Whether this is divine prophecy or the sure coincidence of a madman, Ubisoft leaves that all to your imagination. Bring on the apocalypse is all I have to say, which at this point everything you did is insignificant compared to a nuclear war. The game ends with Joseph Seed gloating about being right in his prophecy, unless you go with the other ending, which is honestly just shit. You just walk away, leaving Joseph there, and the sheriff tells you they are going to get some National Guard or the armory or some shit. Then all of a sudden the radio starts playing, hinting that you might still be under the control of the Seed family. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's cool. To be honest, I felt like I was in some kind of drunken stupor, stumbling through the story, taking out my frustrations in a virtual world for the sure shits and giggles of it. The game has a strong opening and a meandering middle, and a serviceable ending, if I can even call it that. For what the story is lacking on coherence, I think the game just about makes up for it with the characters. The coolest and raddest dude would have to be little baby brother John Seed. He's the most engaging out of all the brothers because there's no bullshit dreamscape sequence. It's just you and him in a room and he's monologuing about his life. The thing that sticks out the most about his character is how he came to be the way he is. Most of his speeches could be taken as extreme of someone dealing with a psychotic break. If you take the time and listen to all his mad ramblings, there's actually a rationale behind his philosophy. His whole doctrine centers around pain and the process of release, that we live our lives in a constant state of hiding away our more baser needs in order to fit in, that there are parts of us drenched in wickedness and sin that are screaming to be released, and as John would say, we only need to say yes to it. However, the part where it goes to the cuckoo's nest is when he carves people's flesh off to get rid of all that sin. That's not really cool, which bears some resemblance to Catholics and their redemptive suffering, you know, if you've seen the Da Vinci Code movie. However, there's just something so glib and sardonic about John that I like more compared to the other ones. Like when you're first introduced to him, he has this televised sermon and the music's playing in the background. There's this kind of peaceful bliss to it, but we as the players already know the fucked up shit he's probably up to. And I can't really say I had too much of a problem with this character. If you had a gun in my head, I guess I could say that his demeanor, you know, the whole big smile followed by fits of rage, can be pretty one note. Another thing I could note, the whole speech about the player's sin is wrath is very meta. I kind of liked it actually. It's kind of a clever way to create that meaningful interaction between you and John, yet when you think about it, you start to realize how shallow the sentiment is. Because it's like, the fuck are you talking about? You assholes are the ones attacking me. I could literally be standing in an open field in the middle of nowhere, fucking plane spawns above me and start shooting at me for no fucking reason. So, then you have Faith Seed, who apparently isn't related to the three brothers, which if anyone cares about Far Cry lore, there have been other Faiths before her, which could explain why she speaks in third person about her experiences. Essentially, as you fill that progress bar, you're swept away to a beautiful dreamscape. Out of all the other siblings, she's the only one to not have direct contact with the character. She only contacts you through the dreamscape, which really drives home the fact of her being otherworldly, almost a divine figure to take reverence in. Once she starts monologuing, she tells you about her being ostracized and shamed, possibly hinting at her being raped, which leads her to turn to a life of drugs to cope. Only through finding Joseph is she able to find her redemption. The themes that Faith deal with are freedom of self. She offers you to take that leap of faith, which you don't actually have a choice, because I stood there for like 10 minutes waiting for her to say something, and then I stood there for like another 10 minutes trying to rebel against the game, hoping something would happen, but nothing. But when you do take that leap of faith, you're supposed to be accepted as you are, almost hinting at the cultural divide taking place in our society between the SJWs, the alt-right conservatives, you know, the Republicans, Democrats, between race and gender and sexual orientation, between the rich and the poor, etc., etc. You know, there's always a side to take, right or wrong, dilemma to face. There's never a gray area, only white and black, and depending on where you stand is the judgment you'll face, which has me thinking about social media and our method of communication, constantly putting us in this state of judging someone, as if we find someone or something to put on trial, casting our judgment without actually taking the time to consider how things came to be. Faith eludes of being free of the ideological stances that govern our life, and free from the fears of being judged, that we could be pure and innocent again. While getting to interact with Faith, you also have some one-on-one time with the marshal. You remember, the guy from the helicopter who seemed pretty gun-ho to arrest Joseph Seed. You can kind of infer that the marshal doesn't actually care about bringing justice to Hope County. After being captured by the Seeds, the marshal is taken by Faith, and apparently you have to save him, which, go why? I mean, I know I'm supposed to be the good guy and do good guy stuff, but I actually don't do good guy stuff. Anyway, the little monologue you have with him while on the rowboat is quite interesting. The marshal raises the question of freedom and happiness. I mean, are you really free? I mean, you very well can't go outside and stab the first guy you see, or go to the nearest playground with a bag of coke and snort it all. You also can't go to the nearest Walmart and helicopter dick or helicopter tits your way through the checkout line. Essentially, we live our life, not in the benefit of living, but for the possibility to live. What I mean is that for the majority of your life, you'll probably be working for some asshole. That you're not living for yourself, but you're living for your boss, for your promotion, for the higher pay, all in the hopes to have a life one day worth living. So we jump through all these hoops for the chance at happiness, never realizing that if we let that shit go, this has been there the whole time, which feels like some kind of hippy dippy bullshit.
I guess we can talk about the older brother now, Jacob. He doesn't have those long monologues like the other siblings, but he does still try to allude to some ideological stance. After hearing about his tour in Iraq during the Gulf War, you gain some insight into his psyche, hinting at the fact that he ate a dude, and I think he might have PTSD. I can assume that he's alluding that the weak must be sacrificed to create the strong. And who are the weaklings? He doesn't actually define who's weak and who's strong. I believe it to be a situation of trial and tribulation, that by stripping an individual of their humanity and letting them return to their baser needs, we find out who is the weak and who is the strong. And his role in all of this is to call the herd, to bring the strong under his wing. Throughout your interactions with him, he's basically conditioning you, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. He puts some images on the screen and plays some music, and all of a sudden I'm under his control. I mean, for what it's worth, he sends you through a gauntlet, and each time you go through it, you try to do it faster and better than the last time. Eventually you get to the end of it, and you shoot a faceless individual, which I thought was kind of weird at the time. After going through it enough times, you find out that he was actually sending you to kill one of the resistance leaders, who I can't remember the name of. What was it, Bob? Was it Bill? I don't think that was his name either. I don't actually fucking care. I guess the turn of events are kind of interesting, but then again, I could care less about the guy I'm sent to kill. Finally, we have the father himself, Joseph Seed, the man who has an issue with personal space and likes to stare at people for an ungodly amount of time. And he's not as savage as Voss or ruthless like Pagan Men. You know, the father offers his own brand of depravity, I guess. I mean, there's just an intensity to his eyes. It's like he's not trying to persuade or convince you of what he's doing. There's an earnest look to him. He's not trying to filter himself or put up a mask. And comparing him to the other family members, he never tries to manipulate you or mind control you personally. He does it to the other NPCs in the game, but not you. Maybe part of the reason that he doesn't try to kill you and the other family members don't try to kill you is because they already know. They already know that everything you're doing in the game doesn't really matter because it's all going to be destroyed. I could speculate that Joseph references seals being broken and that you're the possible harbinger of the apocalypse. I guess I could spin the yarn to get some implied meaning from all this, but really when it comes down to Joseph Seed, I think he could have been a really awesome villain in the game. However, he had to share the limelight with the other siblings, which kind of really detracted from him. I have to give a disclaimer though that this might not be the intended message of the game. I know Ubisoft has gone on record denouncing any kind of taking a stance, for which a lot of people might beg to differ. I think the real problem here is that they didn't take a stance. It's that they wanted to play with the ideas of war and abuse, self-harm and xenophobia, capitalism and American politics without actually saying anything meaningful, which in a lot of ways hinders the story and makes your interaction with the Seed family less coherent. Essentially, all games share a similar mechanic of having a gameplay loop, of continuously doing the same repeated actions over and over again, and depending on how well the game hides this determines the fun factor. Now in the case of Far Cry 5, it definitely gives the illusion of being more nuanced. I mean, with them scaling back the map to allow interaction with the world in a natural way, in theory does encourage exploration, but eventually I get tired of that, because I already know what I'm going to discover. Maybe I'll come across a doomsday stash or find a wacky NPC here or there, but the novelty of it eventually wears thin. I do appreciate Ubisoft going for a more comedic tone with the NPCs though. But this just leads me to the discussion of presentation, something I mentioned earlier. Think about Bethesda's Fallout series or CD Projekt Red's Witcher 3. The way you go about receiving quests in the game sometimes centers around you getting to know the quest giver, or in some scenarios there's an actual layer to the quest being given, almost feeling like a self-contained story. I have no meaningful interactions with the NPCs in the Far Cry game. All they want me to do is kill 5 of something or collect 5 of this. There are a few quests here and there where you go on wacky side adventures, which in a lot of ways can be jarring in terms of tone. I mean, one minute you're whisked away to have one of the Seed family tell you about drug abuse, and then in another instance you're setting people on fire with disco music in the background. There's just a huge divide between the story and gameplay that almost inexcusable at times. If you look at other games that have been criticized for their lack of cohesion with story, like for instance BioShock, with people noting how the excessive violence in the game doesn't align with the story, which I have to argue that there's a sense of purpose behind the killing. You're in a civilization that is in ruins. The people in the city have reverted back to their baser needs. Everyone is out to take what you have. However, with Far Cry 5, I feel like I'm in a shooting gallery where I'm rewarded for killing more and more of the enemies, only to be scolded by the family for killing so many people. There's no real consequence if I hurt innocent bystanders, shoot my NPC allies, or just take delight in kicking them in the nuts. However, in BioShock, you have a decision on whether or not you want to save the little sisters. It just kills me that Far Cry 5 wants to rip off progression mechanics from RPGs without taking the good stuff, like well-written characters or interesting side quests or missions.
The mission structure in all their games are fucking... oh god. I do remember doing a quest to get some bulls laid so I could harvest their testicles. That's funny, right? Then again, every time I'm about to enjoy one of their wacky side quests, the fucking mechanics immediately kill my high. So when I tried to get the bull's testicle, the game told me my inventory was full. I then had to leave the quest and go sell all the shit in my inventory, which just made me go, why can't I go into my inventory bag and just dump this shit out? I know it's a minor complaint, but it's like they take these elements from RPGs without fully understanding how they could work in the game. This isn't just one time that this has happened, but it's a pile that just builds and builds until it can only be recognized as shit. And I'm not saying the game is shit as a whole, there's just elements of it that reek of it. Another thing Far Cry and Assassin's Creed struggles with is the stealth mechanics, and it's no better with Far Cry 5. It baffles me how the stealth has been so up and down throughout this series, if I can even say that. Far Cry 3, it was serviceable, though not believable, it still got the job done. And in Far Cry 4, it was a fucking joke. The only weapon you needed was a silent sniper rifle, and in Far Cry Primal, I don't really know, I didn't fucking play it. Now, in Far Cry 5, it's like there could be a lone jagoff in the fucking corner, throw a baseball bat or a knife, killing him, and the asshole on the other side of the base with some sort of psychic connection knows that he's dead and knows to run to the approximate location of his dead friend, for which I then promptly scream bullshit at the TV and throw my fucking controller. Then, you have the airplanes, which, in theory, is a cool idea, till you fly around in them, trying to shoot other airplanes, which I just found myself going in a never-ending circle. I don't like the airplanes. I think we'll just leave it at that.
Then we have NPC allies. Yeah, just throw the whole sandwich and burrito in there. Let's just see what we get. Which I have to ask, why are there allies? I mean, the game's not that hard. I guess they can sometimes be pretty helpful, unless it's Cheeseburger, because he's fucking awesome. He wrecks shop every time, every day. The Sharky guy is kind of useful too, and the other animals are just fucking useless. Like Boomer, he's supposed to be a scout, but why do I need that when I have binoculars and can stealth? Then there's a mountain lion, which I guess is a callback to Primal or something. Once again, why do I need a cougar stealth kill shit? I mean, as soon as Boomer or Peaches are spotted, they're fucking dead. So, not a whole lot of support there. I mean, it just feels like an add-on that doesn't really add anything. Weird. Some part of me has to believe that there's a potential here, and I really wish Ubisoft would just walk out on that E3 stage or something and just whip out his dick and say, yeah, this is the fucking game we're gonna make. You know, I just wish they would take the approach of balls to the wall and go all in for once. I mean, they almost did it with Blood Dragon, and I really like to see them return to that style, because if I see another Far Cry game taking place in bumfuck nowhere, ugh. Just give us a game that takes place in space. And for fuck's sake, just give us ninjas in Assassin's Creed. How hard is that? I mean, part of me still feels like they'd fuck that up somehow. Oh, yeah, I almost forgot. I played some multiplayer, and I didn't try to build a map or anything. I mean, we've seen this before with Doom, Halo, and Grand Theft Auto 5, which at this point, Ubisoft's not really doing us any favors. From what I played of it, which was Deathmatch, I guess I could have some fun with it, but I don't really see the multiplayer sticking around for too long. I don't think a community is going to be able to build from this. But by all means, if you need some sort of tallying system, I give this game 5 nihilism points out of 5. I think I'm going to curl up here on the floor now and have myself a drink of some delicious punch. I'm just gonna get on. There we go.